What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Crowded Lake. Today I'll be reading chapter 10 of 11 of The Awful Battle of the Pekes and What's Possible, a Cats the Musical fanfiction written by me. If you'd like to follow along with the book, there is links to it on fanfiction.net, AO3, and Wattpad in the description. There is also a Google form to recommend fanfictions that I read in the future. So if you'd like to hear a specific story from any fandom, go ahead and recommend it with that Google form. With that being said, here's chapter 10. It's either blazing hot or freezing cold. Munkustrap had been asleep for a little bit at this point, and Jenny Anydots couldn't help but feel younger, holding that grown Jellicle leader like she used to when he was just a newborn kit. Some things never change, like the way his tail loves to wrap itself around his legs while he's sleeping, or the knobby way his face relaxes with his eyebrows raised. But other things do change. Monk's back now featured claw marks left by McCavity in the fight from the Jellicle Ball. His paw pads were burned and his fur around them were frayed. Then there was the way he breathed. No matter how long he'd been asleep for, he still breathes like he's anticipating to be jumped, or he's the one about to do the jumping. Something so insecure and sudden rose and fell with his visible ribcage. Like a boat rocking on the controlled waves of a wave pool at an indoor water park. A sense of danger in a controlled space. Jenny continued her efforts to be a comfort to him, petting him along his arms and back, chin and head, behind his ears, and the occasional tummy scratch. All while she did, she felt the light fluffiness of fur and how it was periodically interrupted by a chunk of fur that felt crusty and stiff, covered by blood or dried dirt. The skin beneath the fur started as smooth and untouched until she ran her paw pads against wounds and scrapes, claw marks and burns that, even while asleep, Munkustrap winced at. It got to the point where Jenny Anydots, as hard as she tried, couldn't remain just laying down. For her age, she was very sprightly, so she got up right to work with the cleaning of her den, dusting the top shelves before sweeping the grounds. A gust of wind blew in while she was sweeping. A big pile of dirt flew right over onto Munkustrap. Jenny wanted to wait until he woke up to clean him, but now that he was extra dirty because of the draft, she couldn't reasonably wait any longer. Jenny crawled herself back onto the bed, hovering over the grown Tom, reaching her head to his shoulder and licking it gently. Her face tensed as her tongue picked up all the dirt and grime. It utterly disgusted her, but fed into her sympathy for the cat who was so scared about the state of the tribe, he didn't even stop once to lick himself. Jenny had her work cut out for her with this one. She kept going at the shoulder, but then the taste of dust just wouldn't leave the fur. She bent down, licking faster and harder than any cat should. Don't take that out of context, or do. It might be funny. With a growing concern as the reality of the sensation sunk back into her stomach, only getting glimpses of it through her fur and refusal to eat. Soon, Jenny must have been licking him too hard because the nest rocked with each of her movements, and Munkustrap was stifled awake as Jenny lost her balance, the weight in her arms slipping as she fell on top of Munkustrap. Munkustrap was screaming from underneath Jenny. He was thrashing and squirming so much Jenny couldn't regain any stability to sit herself back up. Just then, Tugger and Mistopheles rushed through the door. Mistopheles uses his magic to levitate Jenny into the air as Tugger swooped in, holding Munkustrap in his arms. Misto lets Jenny go softly on the rug in the middle of the den. "Thank you, dear," Misto replies with an affectionate bow. Tugger remains holding his brother as tight as he could, wrapping his upper body in his baby blanket, making sure his arms feel weight. Tugger shushes Munkustrap, rocking him back and forth. "You're safe. No one is going to hurt you. No one is hurting me. No one is hurting the tribe. You are safe. Don't worry about anything. I love you." Munkustrap was finding it hard to catch his breath. He felt tied to the ground, but that also meant he couldn't swim to the surface. He was tied down to the bottom of his ocean of pain and panic. His hyperventilating, paired with his hunger that was never truly cured, made him nauseous all over again. Munkustrap was finally able to get noise to come through his throat, but instead of words like he intended, they spurred out of him, sporadic staccato whimpers and hums, a vocal kind of panting. Tugger just wanted him to breathe, so he held him close. He knew he was tough, but any person with a heart would break, seeing their brother in shambles, so hurt, so filled with fear and uncertainty. Munkustrap was always there for him. There would never be a doubt that Tugger could return the favor. Mistopheles followed Jenny Anydots to the counter, preparing a small meal of chicken soup. Jenny used the water bowl that she usually let the kittens use to practice drinking from a bowl and not a bottle to make sure there wasn't enough food to intimidate the Tom. This was a lot more than 5 bites or 5 swallows since it's liquid, but it's enough to fill a stomach without being too much right out of the gate. Tugger kept his hold on his brother, doing his best to ground him. "Come on. I got you. You're safe. Breathe with me." Tugger took a very loud and slow inhale, holding it, then loudly and slowly dragging out an exhale. He did this a couple times with Munkustrap eventually following suit. In a couple minutes' time, Munkustrap was following along with Tugger's breathing. When they both inhaled, their stomachs would press into each other, and with each exhale, they felt each other's hot breath on their necks and chests. Once Tugger was sure Munk had caught his breath, he loosened his grip, pushing Munk up to look him in the eyes. They sat, just looking at each other for just a moment before Munkustrap was overcome with his burden again and sobbed. Tugger took him back into a hug, but was happy it wasn't panic or anxiety. It was just utter defeat. Exhaustion. Munk was no longer defending himself. He knew he was safe, and he felt safe enough to just let it all out. His love for his brother, happiness and safety, the undefiable tiredness seeping through his veins, the anger he felt at McCavity and himself, the regret, the pain that nothing could be changed and he'll have to live with all of this for the rest of his life. It was all too much and it had to go somewhere, so it all fell out through his cries of mercy and flooded sobs. Tugger took it all, running his claws gently up and down Monk's back in support and comfort. He didn't dare say a word, letting his brother feel what he was feeling and think what he was thinking, no matter what it was. I'm sorry. Munkustrap squeezed out of him, muffled by Tugger's fur. "Don't worry about it. There's nothing to be sorry about. Do what you need to, doll." Munk used his paws to grip Tugger's mane and ground himself, not needing to be grounded by Tugger this time, but instead beside him. He sat up, using the back of his paw to wipe his eyes and nose, sniffling with vigor. I'm stupid. Tugger moved Monk's paw to wipe Monk's face himself. "You're not stupid, silly. You're Munkustrap." This finally garnered a recognizable eye roll from his older brother. That one characterized movement gave Tugger the reassurance he needed that things were leveling out. But also, you needed to cry eventually. It's just what you needed, so you did it. Munkustrap nodded, his breath returning with a tired exhale. Jenny, standing at the edge of the nest, handed Tugger the bowl of soup. It was clear to her that Tugger was going to have a much better time with him than she ever could, and there was no use in taking this time away from them. If it wasn't for poor Mistopheles falling asleep while the soup was being cooked, she would have left, though she knew better than to leave the situation with an unattended Mistopheles. "Wanna have a snack with me?" Munkustrap nodded, both getting in a sitting position at the side of the nest, legs dangling off now as if sitting in a human chair. You want a spoon, or are you gonna lick up the soup? Munkustrap took the bowl, taking the unspoken third option of him drinking the soup up like a human finishing the milk after a bowl of cereal. He'd open his mouth and unleash his tongue with any piece of chicken that appeared in the flow, but for the most part kept his tongue in his mouth and drank away at the steamy broth. Jenny was super happy that Tugger was able to get him to eat, and with such ease too. There was no hesitation or fear, just a grown Tom going on for a bowl of soup. Munkustrap grew sleepy again, the warm soup finally making his stomach feel heavy and full. He didn't want to sleep, though. He had only been up for a little bit, not even an hour. There was no way he could be tired this fast. He wouldn't let himself. He wanted Tugger to stay with him. He wanted Tugger to stay with him. Tugger took back the empty bowl, planning to keep it in his arms, but Jenny swooped in to take the dirty dish from him. With both of his paws now free, he made his move, resecuring Monk's baby blanket around him. Why is this on me? Where'd you even get this from? Tugger playfully bapped the top of Monk's head. It's on you so you're warm, and I got it from your mom. Which wasn't a lie, just an ill-timed joke regardless. Monk, in his current emotional shambles and grogginess, his eyes widened as his voice came to a whisper. Mom? It was at this moment Tugger knew that he had done fucked up. Whoever their mom was, she either left or kept herself a secret since Tugger had been born. He had no knowledge of the Queen and was now frozen and incapable. Munkustrap gripped the blanket around his shoulders and looked up at Tugger with the wonderment and cluelessness of a kitten. Where's Mama? Jenny, sensing the tension radiating off at Tugger, swooped in, petting Monk's head. I'm right here, dearie. It's all right. Monk shivered, his ears twitching at the sensation of the petting. You're not my mama. Where is she? Why hasn't she come to see me? Munkustrap was dazed, staring off into space, voice raising in pitch as he fiddled with the corner of his blanket, flicking it in an anxious motion. Tugger and Jenny made frantic eye contact. Tugger was looking to Jenny for how to answer since he didn't know who an everlasting Monk's mom could be. Jenny, for the life of her, didn't know how to answer. She couldn't remember which of Old Deuteronomy's 99 wives could have been his mother. All of Old Dute's mates left the junkyard and the tribe after mating with him out of respect, which is why they only received 3 kittens from all those marriages. Then the obvious answer hit Jenny like a truck. I know I'm not your mom, but I love you very much, and I love making sure you're safe and healthy. I can promise you that you are safe. Tugger went back to hugging Munkustrap, his arms wrapping him gently, one paw holding his head and scratching it, the other resting on his back and petting that as well. Jenny joined in, scratching the top of his spine. See, I even know your favorite spot to get scratches. Monk started purring, still using his paws to fidget with the corner of his blanket. Monk knew that he was acting childish, but he couldn't help himself. He felt confused and hazy, like he didn't properly fit into his own body. He just felt so small and helpless, purring into Jenny and Tugger's touch like it was all he needed in that moment. He hated all of this, but knew well enough to know he needed it at the same time. He needed to be held, he needed to be cared for, he needed to feel helpless so he could finally accept help. It provided him comfort, helped him feel less guilty about not being the perfect protector, though what he did feel guilty about was worrying his loved ones. As he was curled up in Tugger's arms, he imagined himself as a kid again, being small enough to hold in the palms of an adult's paws, his inability to walk on his own paws because his torso was too heavy for his legs, getting cooed at and loved on, no responsibilities. Because really, at the end of the day, having not to care in the world is all that this was about. It didn't matter what happened or how he was treated. It was the ability to let go and sleep. Sleeping soundly with a rhythmic pumping in his lungs, like there weren't a million arrows pointing at him the moment he let his guard down. Because there wasn't. But in the end, he was overcome by shame for acting like he had no sense and talking like he had just learned how to. So he gradually sat back down, eyes off in the distance somewhere. Jenny and Tugger, who were all up on him, leaned back away from him as he rose, surprised to see him shift so suddenly. Munkustrap knew he had to take some responsibility for himself. Making sure he had what he needed should be the first step in getting better, right? Hey, Jen, if you don't mind, I'm actually still hungry. Can we eat something? Jenny Anydots lit up, eyes wide and stomach sucked in. Of course, dear. She then scurried off to the kitchen to whip up his favorite. Tugger, on the other hand, just started to wrap his head around what was happening, getting a chance to comprehend his and his brother's actions and not just acting on instinct. Did his brother really feel so small? Was this just a temporary thing since Monk's body was put through so much in the past week? Tugger wanted to know how to protect his brother, but was scared to know the answer in case he had been feeling like this for years, and he just never batted an eye. Still, he couldn't show it on his face. The concern that flushed him out like the reflection of the light on a piece of plastic. Tugger put on his usual smirk and turned to his brother, who now seemed more awake and aware. So, bro, having trouble breathing? It shows, 'cause your face is turning purple. Monk looked over at him. Not with the energy he usually has when he's annoyed, like eye rolls and such, but of just exhaustion, defeat. Tugger didn't know what to talk about that wouldn't upset him, and puns was really the only thing he had planned. Just wanting his brother to know he was there for him. He placed a paw on his knee, giving him a toothed grin when Monk looked up from the touch. Munkustrap couldn't help but lift his lips a little at the goofy grin his brother put on display. The two of them had weird ways of showing up, but they did love each other. Jenny, greeting them too, with her own beaming, handed each of them a plate of oatmeal and broccoli. Munkustrap would tear this apart as a kitten, and it was hardly any different now. The way he gobbled everything up on his plate, you wouldn't suspect he struggled eating just earlier that day. Tugger wasn't too fond of the texture of hot mush, but forced himself to eat, not only because he wanted to be gracious of Jenny and her hospitality, but to keep his brother going. If Tugger didn't touch his plate, it might make Monk feel guilty. Either way, both boys finished their plates just fine, with extras being made for Jenny herself to eat, as well as Mistopheles when he wakes up. Monk was finally starting to feel like himself. He felt every muscle in his body bounce with newfound energy. He was finally awake. Monk knew that it would take a while to process everything, but for now he didn't feel like a shell of a cat, and that's about as good as it's going to get for now, so he was pretty happy about that. Jenny, seeing life spring behind Monk's eyes, brought out some chopped watermelon as a treat. This was also something that Munkustrap loved as a kid. When he first was able to eat it, he'd suck out all the juice and then roll the solid skin like part on his tongue. As he got older, he still enjoyed it as a snack between training sessions. He carried a lot of tension, one of the more surprising places being his tongue as well as his jaw. When he got the chance to eat watermelon, his jaw finally learned to let go, and his tongue fell flat, vertebrae by vertebrae. This beautifully needed moment was not an exception. Munkustrap hummed in radiance, eating his favorite snack. He knew Jenny Anydots knew how much he liked them, and that this was probably a scheme of some kind, but he didn't care. He let the watermelon take his body, the juices soaking into his fur and spreading across his lips. The liquid was sticky and dried out his mouth just a bit, but It was never a big deal when he put another one in, rehydrating his mouth all over again. Munkustrap was overridden with jubilation, exultation making every bone in his body vibrate at his muscles, finally caved in full, indulgent pleasure. Sometimes in life, Munkustrap thought to himself, all you need is some watermelon, and everything will be okay. Munkustrap purred and hummed in his excitement, taking delicate bites and monstrous bites, any type of bite you could think of. Tugger, who hasn't touched a single watermelon slice, opted out to just stare at Monk, sliding off the pieces from the plate into Monk's mouth. Tugger was trapped in some world between horrified and utter shock and awe. After all these years, after the past week of seeing him so stone cold, the thing that brought him out of his funk was a fucking watermelon? Luckily, because Munkustrap seemed a lot more awake and relaxed, Tugger finally thought the fog had cleared enough for him to start making some jokes again. Damn, is that how you eat out your girl, Demi? Jenny held out her paw over her mouth to stop her from yelping as Tugger burst into fits of boisterous laughter, but Monk didn't find it funny at all. In fact, he now felt everything in his body tense back up, eyes wide, as he gulped what he had left in his mouth. Demeter. He quickly stood up, rinsing the plate off in a hurry. Where's Demeter? Is she okay? Does McCavity have her? Jenny gripped his shoulders from behind at the sink. She's at your den. She is more than okay. Jellicle is over there right now. They're both well. Monk panted a bit, leaning down and lapping up some of the water from the faucet to unsticky his throat. No, she's not okay until I see it. I'm going to get her. With that, Monk sprung from Jenny's grasp, leaping towards the door and slamming it in a haste, causing Mistopheles to jolt awake from his slumber. Jenny instantaneously grabbed her emergency bag and leapt out the door. Tugger, being the magnificent boyfriend he was, swooped up Mistopheles, comforting him and catching him up on what just happened as he raced to catch up with his brother. Their paw prints were too fast and nimble to even create a dent in the ground below them, but were breezy enough to cause big pools of dust to cloud their trail. Monk hurried his feet, zooming as swiftly as he could on his way. He flew past a content Jellicle. She immediately grew concerned at his manic pace. Sweets, are you okay? Where are you going in such a hurry? She couldn't make out anything but a crescendoed Demeter echoing through the appliances of the junkyard. Jelly quickly pivoted, sprinting after Munkustrap. Demeter got frightened by so much as a knock on her door. If Munkustrap came home screaming and out of breath, forcefully flinging the door open and heading straight to her, who knows how much of that would freak the poor queen out. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this fic, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when the new episode comes out next week. There's only one chapter left, so you better believe it's gonna be cool. We've are at the end of this book, so if you'd like to recommend a fic I read after this one, please go ahead and suggest it in the Google form, because I'd like ideas of what to read, because I don't know what to read, man. I just live here. Thank you so much for listening, and much like Monk trying to find Demeter, do your best.